Sometimes, the eyes speak louder than any words, and that night, his eyes screamed the truth. The room was crowded, filled with the constant hum of conversations, clinking glasses, and flashes from cameras capturing every moment. People moved in elegant waves, shaking hands, sharing polite laughter, pretending everything was perfect. And in the middle of all that noise, I stood still. My hand wrapped loosely around a glass, my lips curved into a practiced smile. I was aware of every movement, every sound, yet my focus was entirely fixed on one thing. Or rather, one person. He walked in. The moment I saw him, my chest tightened. He wasn't rushing. His steps were deliberate, almost slow, as if he knew exactly how much presence he commanded in a room. Every head turned toward him, he had that kind of magnetic pull, the kind you can't fake. But to me, it wasn't his presence that struck me. It was his eyes. From afar, he was the same man the world knew, confident, charming, untouchable. But I wasn't looking at the man everyone else saw. I was looking at the truth behind his gaze. For a fraction of a second, our eyes met. The rest of the room blurred, as if the world had melted away, leaving just the two of us. And in that single heartbeat, I saw it. Guilt. Sadness. Something unspoken, something he had been trying so hard to hide. He smiled, of course he did. He always smiled when the cameras were near. But it wasn't the smile I knew. Not the one that had once made my heart race, the one that lit up his entire face. This smile stopped at his lips. It never reached his eyes. I could read him. I had always been able to. And no matter how much he tried to bury it, the truth was there, staring back at me. I remember the first time we met like it happened yesterday. It wasn't glamorous, not the way people imagine love stories to be. There were no spotlights, no perfectly framed moments. It was just real. We were on set. The air smelled faintly of fresh paint and coffee, the kind that had been sitting in paper cups for too long. He was standing near the lighting equipment, deep in conversation with someone from the crew. I wasn't supposed to notice him, not yet. But somehow, my eyes found him, and the rest of the world faded for just a second. He turned his head, caught me looking, and smiled. Not the kind of smile you give out of politeness, but one that made you feel as if he had just let you in on a secret. I didn't even know his name yet, but that smile, it lingered. Our first conversation wasn't anything extraordinary. We talked about the scene we were about to film, exchanged a few jokes about the weather, and somehow, by the time the camera started rolling, I already felt like I knew him. And maybe, in some strange way, I did. Because from that day on, we gravitated toward each other. Between takes, we'd find ourselves standing a little too close. Sharing quiet laughs in the corner. Talking about things that had nothing to do with the script, our favorite songs, the places we wanted to travel, childhood memories that we rarely shared with anyone. There was an ease with him that I couldn't explain. He didn't feel like someone I had just met, he felt like someone I had been waiting for. And the more time we spent together, the more I realized that it wasn't just me who felt that pull. His eyes, those same eyes that would one day betray the truth, always softened when they found me in a crowded room. It didn't take long for people to notice. The crew would tease us, saying we had natural chemistry. The director would smile knowingly when a scene between us didn't need retakes. Even the makeup artist once whispered, "You two look like you've known each other for years." And then there were the fans. They were quick to pick up on the connection. Social media lit up with clips of us, smiling, teasing, looking at each other in ways that didn't quite fit the script. "Are they acting, or is this real?" the captions would ask. Every interview we did together seemed to fuel the rumors, but neither of us confirmed nor denied them. We just let people wonder. In a way, I think we liked the mystery. Because behind the curtain of public speculation, we had something that felt ours. Something untouched. Until the first cracks appeared. It started small. So small that, at first, I convinced myself I was imagining it. A text that used to get an instant reply now took hours. Calls that used to last deep into the night became shorter, filled with awkward pauses. When we were together, I'd catch him staring at his phone, his mind somewhere far away. I told myself he was just busy. We were both working non-stop, after all. Schedules were unpredictable, pressure was high. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. It wasn't about time, it was about presence. He was there, but not with me. There was a dinner one night, after a long day on set. I was telling him a story about something funny that had happened with the wardrobe team, and halfway through, I realized he wasn't listening. His eyes were fixed somewhere beyond me, his mind clearly elsewhere. And when I stopped talking, he didn't even notice. That was the first time I felt it, the sting of being in the same room, yet feeling completely alone. As the weeks passed, the gap between us grew. It wasn't a fight. There were no shouting matches, no dramatic exits. It was quieter than that, and somehow, that made it worse. We still smiled for the cameras, still posed together when the press asked. But behind those images were two people drifting apart in ways the public could never see. At events, he'd stand just far enough that our arms didn't touch. In interviews, his answers became shorter when my name came up. And in private, the comfortable silences we once shared began to feel heavy, filled with all the words we weren't saying. I started to wonder if he was hiding something. A thought I hated, but couldn't push away. Every time our eyes met, I searched for reassurance, for the familiar warmth I had always found there. But more and more, I saw shadows instead. When I heard he'd be at that event, I told myself I was ready. I'd see him, smile, act like nothing had changed. I'd play my role just like he did. But a part of me, one I didn't want to admit existed, still hoped. Hoped for a look, a gesture, something that would say, "I'm still here. We're still us." The night arrived, and as I got ready, I stared at myself in the mirror longer than usual. Not to check my makeup or my dress, but to make sure I could hold my expression when I saw him. To make sure I wouldn't let him see that I was still holding on. What I didn't know then, was that his eyes would tell me everything I needed to know. The air inside the hall felt heavier than it should have. Maybe it was the perfume, the heat from the lights, or the hundreds of conversations blending into a constant hum. But for me, the weight came from somewhere else. From him. He walked in like he always did, shoulders back, head high, the kind of confidence that makes people part in his path without him saying a word. Cameras flashed. People reached for his hand, whispered his name, laughed a little too loudly at whatever he said. And then, he saw me. It was only a second, but I swear time slowed. The crowd blurred, the noise dimmed, and there we were, two people standing oceans apart in the same room. His face lit up in the practiced way it always did in public. That easy smile, that subtle charm. But his eyes. They told another story. There was no hiding in them. No matter how perfectly his lips curved, his eyes betrayed him. They held something raw, something heavy. It was guilt, yes, but also recognition. Like he knew I could see straight through him, and he hated that I could. I felt my breath catch. My fingers tightened around my glass. And in that single look, I knew that every unanswered question, every restless night, every silent distance between us had a reason. A reason he would never say out loud. I didn't need him to speak. His eyes had already confessed. I wanted to look away. God, I should have looked away. But I couldn't. Because in that moment, all the pieces began to fall into place. The delayed replies. The distant stares. The way his laughter no longer reached me the way it used to. I replayed our memories in my mind like an old film reel. The nights we stayed up talking until sunrise. The mornings we stumbled onto set still carrying the warmth of the night before. The way he'd brush my hair back and say, "You have no idea how much you mean to me." I used to believe him. I wanted to believe him. But now, standing there in a room full of strangers, I realized the truth had been quietly sitting in his eyes for weeks, maybe months. I just hadn't wanted to see it. And that's the thing about love. It makes you blind, until it doesn't. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. Part of me wanted to walk straight up to him. To demand an explanation. To ask, why didn't you just tell me? But I didn't move. Neither did he. We circled each other from a distance for the rest of the night. Every time I turned, he was somewhere in my line of sight. And every time our eyes met, I felt that same pull, that same ache. He'd smile, almost as if to say, not here, not now. Maybe he was waiting for me to make the first move. Maybe he was hoping I wouldn't. And so we danced around the truth in silence. The words stayed trapped between us, unspoken, but deafening. By the time the night ended, nothing had been said. Yet everything had been understood. I walked out into the cool night air, my heart heavy but my mind strangely clear. His eyes had given me the closure his lips never could. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages, mentions, notifications, everyone had seen the pictures. The magazines wrote the usual, they looked stunning, they were in the same room again, could this be a reconciliation? I scrolled through the photos. In every one of them, we looked fine. Smiling, standing near each other, exactly what people expected from us. But no one else could see what I saw, the distance in his body language, the weight in his gaze. The comments were full of hope. I knew they still had something. They just need to talk. If only they knew, we had already spoken without saying a word. And in that silent conversation, everything had been decided. I didn't correct the headlines. I didn't post anything to hint at the truth. Because some truths don't belong to the world, they belong to the two people who lived them. It's been months since that night. And people still ask. They still wonder what happened, why things ended the way they did. But here's the truth, sometimes love doesn't end with a fight. Sometimes it ends with a look. That night, his eyes told me everything. They told me he was sorry. They told me he still cared. But they also told me that something had changed, something we couldn't fix. I could have stayed. I could have ignored it. Pretended that smile was real, that the warmth was still there. But once you've seen the truth in someone's eyes, you can't pretend you haven't. And so, I let go. Not because I wanted to. Not because I stopped loving him. But because I knew he was already gone. I could see the truth in his eyes, even when he tried to hide it. And that was the night I stopped searching for answers, because I already had them.